Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Untamed Opinion. I am joined again by Detective that I cannot give names as I did not give the name in the other episode that we did. Before we start, this detective and I actually did a previous episode called Law Enforcement Discussion that is right here on this YouTube channel. So check it out. We actually posted the previous discussion last week, right before this whole thing with George Floyd went down. It's sad that that whole thing went down. That's what we're going to get into in this discussion. But before you hear discussion, I really encourage you to uh, watch and listen to the previous discussion regarding law enforcement, because a lot of what we talked about in that discussion does apply to this discussion as well. So, Detective, I really appreciate you joining me here for the second week in a row.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm glad you are having me, and we get to do this from time to time.
Well, like I said, a lot has happened, since we had the last discussion. We actually had that discussion on a Monday night. I posted the discussion on Tuesday, and then by Tuesday afternoon, early evening, everything just hit the fan. Uh, and a lot has happened in the last week, and that's what we're going to hear. We're going to talk about. Uh, when you first saw that video, when you first saw the video of the officer uh, with the knee on the back of George Floyd's neck, um, what was your first thought? Like, what was going through your head when you first saw that? Not knowing how long that knee has been on the back of the neck, not any of those details, just looking at the video, just hearing what was said or still images. What was going through the back of your head? Like, what was going on?
The initial response to the officer putting his knee at the back of the head, you hear Mr. Floyd saying, "I can't breathe." Um, you have a subject that's not resisting from just first initial looking at the video. You start saying to yourself, "Well, why are you still on this dude? Get the hell off, sit him up, put him in the backseat of the car, and keep it moving. Do whatever you were gonna do." Um, you don't expect this dude to just continue to keep him there while he's not breathing. With There was no need for that. Number one. Number two, we're not even taught that. um
Hmm.
and law enforcement, at least in the state of Florida that I know of, we don't teach anything relating to the neck. We stay away from the neck, we stay away from the groin, we stay away from sensitive areas. So to have seen that, again, this is a different state. You just human instinct is, well, the dude's not resisting, so all right, let him go already, get going, start the paperwork, charge him with whatever you're charging him, and book him. Why are you still on the floor with someone that's not actively fighting you back? So that was my first initial response.
And since more has come into light, since more details has come into light, what is your response now? Like, what is your whole process? Because there's multiple angles. More information came out. He was on the back of the neck for 8 minutes and about 46 seconds, more or
Yeah,
less.
something like that.
Uh, that's an extremely long time to have a knee on the back of the neck. I don't know how anybody.
1 second is too long,
Yeah, I
period.
agree. Yeah. And
um
so what's on your mind now about that?
Once the full video started leaking out, and several images and angles and whatnot, you automatically, my first initial response was, this dude's a freaking douchebag. This dude's a scumbag. This dude has pure malice and hate in his heart. Um, and shame on the other three officers for not having stopped them. That's my first response was, honestly, this dude just committed murder on a video recorded, period. And the other three dudes allowed it. That's exactly what is shown on TV. That's exactly what's playing on social media. That's exactly what the recording captured. It captured a murder on TV by a police officer and three other officers that allowed this to occur. You try to, at least, and you don't try to do this in anything in life, which is Monday morning quarterback. But as someone that has done this line of work for 15 years, and someone that has seen my own personal families become victims of profiling and discrimination by cops, and you sit there and you say, at what point have one of the other officers, hey, get the hell off this dude? Like, what are you doing? This dude's already restrained. He's handcuffed. He's on the ground. Okay, initially he was maybe resisting. I don't know how he ended up on the ground. Fine. But at some point, the humanistic side of you needs to, if you have no malice and you have no evil tendencies or no hate or anything like that, at some point, your humanistic side has to sit this dude up. Okay, send some request for medical attention. Um, like I said earlier, all right, let's get this ball rolling. What are we doing here? Let's put him in the back seat. Let's get him to the station. Let's get him to the processing center. Let's do this paperwork. Let's get him to jail and move on with our day. Um, yeah, it's just honestly, once you see that and you see the disgust, you feel disgusted at that moment of being an officer because you know what's coming.
Hmm.
You know, this is not the first time that we've been in situations like this. Um, I honestly don't believe it'll be the last time. Um, in previous histories, officer involved incidents that have been put on social media, I will not sit there and put my, I would not lean completely in one way or the other. There are some incidents that, yeah, officers completely messed up and did horrible choices and unfortunately took some people's lives. But at the same token, there's some incidents where it could have been prevented by the subject. So in this case, one of the facts, you start looking at the severity of this call by the store owner over a counterfeit bill.
Hmm.
And the gentleman, okay, Mr. Floyd resisted a little bit coming out of the car. That's normal, but you were quickly able to handcuff him. So to me, I'm mind blown as to how it ended up from you handcuffed this dude, you escorted him towards the building, and next you know he's on the ground with your knee on his neck for 9 minutes. Like there is no justification for that, period, ever. Like I said, 1 second is too long because we're not taught that. So to me, when it was all said and done, it was just someone with a malicious heart that committed murder on on a recorded video. You
And
know,
yeah,
my interpretation. I'm
go ahead,
sorry
go
not
ahead.
to cut you off,
Go
but
ahead, go ahead.
even him standing there with his what appears to be his hand in his pocket and kind of just looking up at the video was kind of like a twisted mentality, twisted something going on in his head where it
Hmm.
was almost like trying to be glorified for what was going on. Like it didn't register to me that this was actually happening because this was just pure evil caught on camera.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, he had this look on his face that he was actually enjoying what he was doing, and that was just so sickening. And just I support police officers, wholeheartedly. But like we had in the previous discussion, there are good cops and there are bad cops, and this is one of the very few, one of the very rare bad cops that are out there. And you know, there's no, like you said, there's no justification for what he did. He has hate and malice in his heart, and it almost seemed like this was kind of what he really wanted to happen. And it's very sickening about all this. So when you talk to other officers over the last week about this, and I'm sure you have, what has been their reaction? Like, what has been some of what they've said?
You know, in history past and previous incidents, there's always a try not to judge a book by its cover kind of quorum that goes on amongst officers. Um, you always try to give people the benefit of the doubt because, again, you try not to Monday morning quarterback a situation that you were not physically there for.
True.
But in this case, I think pretty much everyone that I spoke to from previous agencies to previous colleagues to people that are retired now that I still keep in contact with, and everyone was the general consensus was this dude was a piece of shit who committed murder. Period. He killed this dude on a videotape, and it just tarnished a career for people that have completed 30 years already and retired. And it's this piece of shit's decisions or whatever you want to call them have led to innocent bloodshed. It's led to individuals just because they were a badge and a gun, and it's not even because they were black, because they were black, who got executed because of this. So, yeah, the general consensus from everyone that I've spoken to that still do the job is this dude deserves to rot in jail. The other three deserve to get um, something out of this as well. Whether or not directly involved. No, I don't know. That part has to play out with the investigation aspect. But definitely, this dude with this need, Chalvin, I think is his name. He definitely needs to rot in jail. There's no coming back from this. That's someone that's evil that definitely never should have had a badge to begin with. And you start looking at his history and 16, 17 previous involved complaints for excessive force and whatnot, a couple of shootings that were questionable and whatnot. Yeah, you look at someone like that and you say to yourself, that dude should have never been a cop. But it's
I agree.
unfortunate. Here we are.
Yeah, the event, of George Floyd took place around 8 p.m. on Monday night. The four officers were fired Tuesday afternoon by Police Chief Arredondo after reviewing the evidence of that he had at the time. The evidence of the video that went viral all over the place, and he fired him Tuesday afternoon. At that point, with the police chief just firing the four officers, why were they only just fired? Why weren't any of them taken into custody? Why weren't there any arrests at that point? Why was it only fired and no charges at that very moment?
As from an investigative standpoint, which is what I primarily do now, you want to have all your ducks in a row. Like we all understand, it's easy to sit there and say, yeah, he committed murder on video and it's recorded and it's captured. The other officers allowed it. Um, but that's not just that video alone. You give a defense opportunities to find loopholes that can possibly get these people off. So you're trying to gather as much evidence, as many statements, as much that you can find and put on the deck. So when you finally file these charges, you know, a defense attorney can look at this and say, hey, buddy, you're better take a plea because as much evidence as they have on you, you're not going to win this in court.
Mm.
And I'm sure that they did their due diligence. And again, you started seeing different recordings and you started seeing different angles because the investigators started getting video footage from everywhere that they possibly could. I'm assuming they spoke to several people that were on scene and obtained proper statements. And they had enough directly to charge uh, the Chalvin guy.
Mm.
As far as the other three, you're not going to be able to charge them with direct murder unless you can prove that all four of them conspired for this to happen. So what you have is negligence. What you have is manslaughter. What you have is negligence on their part. Um, that's why they were quick to get terminated. They violated policy right then and there. So that's a termination, which I'm sure that they have unions that are going to step in and try to get them their jobs back. Um, but you don't quickly charge them right away because you have to now try to link the nexus to how they got there to begin with. Was this something meditated? Was this something that they planned? Was this something that, do they all have a habit of this, of excessive force? They're trying to put all the dots together before they can proceed criminally against the other three. In my personal opinion, do I think that the other three will get charged? I believe they will. Um, Based on the autopsy reports, of course, there's one that's somehow in favor of the city and the representative, the police department, and there's one by the families that are not in favor of them. So whatever gets introduced moving forward in the trial proceedings is going to determine what charge is going to get prosecuted. So as of right now, he got charged with murder and manslaughter. If the first autopsy is the one that gets accepted and moved forward with, then the murder's out the window because it says it wasn't asphyxiated. He's trying to say that ME's office said it was a heart condition with drugs.
Right.
So back then you're looking at manslaughter. If the family's autopsy one that gets approved and entered into court, then yeah, he's going to get charged and prosecuted with for murder. But with that being said, you won't be able to charge the other three with murder because they had no involvement in the murder. So I'm sure that they're trying to squirrel all this out. I mean, I don't work for Minnesota. I don't know what their practices are, what their standards are. Part of arresting Chauvin initially as quickly as they did was they probably felt they had enough evidence to quickly arrest him to try to slow and contain the riots and the looting and the protests. I'm sure that had something thinking into the let's
Sure.
quickly get this
Sure.
guy in custody, so to prevent what may come. Well, it came eventually, and you had enough to charge him initially just based on the video. So the rest of the last couple of days that they've been working on this after he's been charged is just putting everything together, um, to move forward with his case. And again, it's not as easy as you're not going to get all this evidence in a day or so. This is going to
Right.
take time. A lot of these ME reports take time. And something I said from the get-go was, if I'm the mayor or the governor of this state, I would honestly seek 5 or 6 different independent MEs to come in and do an autopsy report on Mr. Floyd. And it would be literally one of each gender and one of each race. That because you have to now find now you have to unform an unbiased suggestion into the trial proceedings that both parties are going to be comfortable saying, okay, the initial report came out, and I knew the minute I read it that, oh, it's going to be said that this was rigged and they're protecting, and of course they're covering up, which is exactly what came out.
Hmm.
And then when the private families ME report came out, now the other side is saying, of course it's going to say that. They're in favor of that side. They're the ones that did the autopsy for the previous officer involved incidents. So they have to come and support their agenda. So my response is, as expected, well, let's do 2 or 3 more with independent people of different nationalities, people of different ethnicities, people that have no involvement in one way or the other. Because you're going to need to have something to kind of lean towards one ME or the other, or find some kind of median. You're not going to be able to go with either or solely.
Right. The Derek Chauvin was charged, according to reports, was charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter on Friday afternoon, which is when he got arrested. Um, what does that mean? What do those two charges mean, from the best of your knowledge?
Well, the third degree, you said third degree murder and second degree manslaughter.
Correct.
So the level of felony, the level of the third degree, second degree is just what it's going to be able to get proven. Um, in other words, if someone gets charged with first degree murder, it's obviously that it was premeditated and you can prove that, which means this person had the time to plan this properly and acted in ill intent to kill this person. So third degree murder is one where they can't directly say that this individual planned this and he premeditated this and this is what he planned on doing, but nonetheless they can show that he did commit a murder on on video recording, um, and that'll go into the as a law enforcement officer, you have to render aid. That's part of your job. Doesn't matter if you're taking this guy into custody. It doesn't matter, honestly, as sad as it is, that this person just killed your partner. If you manage to take this guy into custody and he stops breathing, it's your legal obligation by the oath you take to render aid. Failure to do so is what leads you to murder charges and manslaughter charges. The manslaughter charge, the degree wise, again, it's his failure to act. It's his conduct that led to this person passing, and then his failing to act, which is the rendering of aid, securing the scene. Like, he didn't do anything that he should have done. You know, First of all, you should have never had your knee there. But even if you did, and you finally got this guy calm, because that's the only reason why you would go there, is to try to calm this dude and get him into custody, which you already had him into custody. You're now expected to sit this guy, put him in the car, and get moving. Let's get the process going. You're not expected to just keep choking him and choking him and choking him until this guy passes out. And even once he passes out, your legal obligation to check for a pulse. And if you don't feel the pulse, now you need to start CPR. Like, that's the process. Those are the steps that need to occur. You can't just sit there and let a person die out, not breathe, and lose a pulse and wait for rescue as if they're the ones that are going to come in and be saviors. No, it's your responsibility. That's what you signed up for. Plus, the level of charges also determine the sentencing, like what a person can face. So, first degree is obviously 25 to life. Second degree is, you know, up to 25 years. Third degree may be up to 20 years. It also determines when you're eligible for probation, parole, whatever. So that's the only thing that changes there.
Okay, no, that's great information. Good point that you made there. According to a report that I read today, there is an update with the other three officers that the other three officers will be charged. According to the lawyer of the family, according to George Floyd's family's lawyer, that the other three will be charged. They will be charged. It didn't say when. It just said they will be. Nothing specified as what those charges would be. But can you just re-clarify what you think possibly those charges could be and what that really means?
They're going to get charged with manslaughter. They're not going to get charged with murder because even though they're on scene and they're not stopping it, they don't have. You have to look at this from the outside looking in. You have to, in plain talks. This is just plain talk. They did not have any physical control or any physical action that led to the death of Mr. Floyd.
Right.
Meaning, they didn't. They were not the ones pressing down on his throat. They were not the ones with the knee on his body. They were not the ones that roughed him up or anything like that. Um, they're there in their minds assisting Officer Chauvin with whatever they were assisting him with, taking him to custody, calming him. I don't know what the thought process was. So you can't directly say that they murdered him, them, the other three. This is all my opinion. This is just
Right.
based on my experience. Now, the manslaughter charge will take effect on all three of them because, again, like I said with Chauvin, it's your duty to save lives. So, regardless of whether or not you're taking people into custody, regardless or not that your partner's the one that this is his body, this is his case, this is his arrestee, but if he's doing something that's leading to this person about to die or dying, you now have to step in and shove this guy off and start CPR and start getting the ball rolling to bring this person back. The
Mhm.
fact that neither one of the three did that is where it's going to end up getting them charged with manslaughter.
Wow. Would it be like an involuntary manslaughter or just manslaughter?
I would venture to say involuntary manslaughter. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think that is the lesser of the two. I don't. I honestly, homicide is not something that, in my years of experience, I've dealt with
Mhm.
at all. The agencies I've worked with, we really never investigated homicides. I have some training and whatnot, but reading the law, you can tell which one is which. And I believe the involuntary is the lesser charge. It's lesser than manslaughter, and by that I mean it might be easier to prove that their actions considered involuntary manslaughter. Um, you're not gonna pin them on murder or anything. I mean, I would be shocked if they get charged with murder to begin with. I can see definitely manslaughter on or involuntary manslaughter on the three. But given what the circumstances are, and given that the federal agencies, the feds are the ones investigating this,
Mhm.
um, I honestly don't see any of them seeing the light of day again. I don't think they're going to be free men. I think they will probably end up taking pleas and probably end up doing prison time in the federal system. Chauvin obviously more than the other three. They'll win. The other three will never cops again. I don't think they'll ever. I don't think they'll be able to protect or keep their certificates. I think their careers are done.
Yeah,
Their lives are done.
their careers are definitely done. Derek Chauvin is obviously the main focal point of anybody and everybody. The other three, you see the one image of the one. I don't even know his background. He looks Asian. He looks like of an Asian persuasion. I'm not exactly sure what his background is. He's probably maybe the second most known. I haven't really seen pictures of the other two. I just know there was four out there. I know there's pictures out there, but the main guy, I mean, like the main one is Derek Chauvin. Do you think that at any point the DA or whoever is going to handle this particular charges and whatnot for the other three, do you think that they will either get some way less charge against them to build up a case against Derek so it's a lot more iron proof or it's their word versus his or whatnot? Do you see them really accepting some kind of deal for lesser charging to build a better case against Derek?
Um, this is definitely going to be on the federal level. So you're going to be talking about the federal prosecutors, if they can prove, if they have any evidence that shows that these individuals worked together to get to this point, meaning they knew about this gentleman, Mr. Floyd, they knew that there was going to be an encounter, and Chauvin set it all up, and because they had history in the past, apparently, from what reports are out there saying that they've known each other 17 years or they worked together at some point in their lives, then yes, then you want to, because then now you're going to definitely look for the murder charge on Mr. Chauvin, and you're going to use these individual statements to get that conviction. Um, I don't know what the history is amongst these four officers. I don't know if they're just co-workers and that's all it is. I don't know if they're somehow related. I don't know if they're just very good friends that have been working together for several years. Um, Again, it's, do they have any evidence that shows that this was premeditated and they planned this? If they can figure that out, or if that's the case, then yeah, I can see them trying to use the other individuals, plea deal where their evidence, their testimony is going to convict murder, and it's a win-win in their eyes. If they can't, they don't have any of that, and they can't prove that because we don't know if that's the case.
Sure.
Then no, I don't. It'll just be individual charge, individual prosecution on all of them. Moving forward, there'll be no plea deals. They won't use them against Mr. Chauvin because they may not feel like they need to. I mean, could it be possible that they may offer something to these individuals? But again, you'd have to kind of have an idea or some kind of evidence that would suggest that Chauvin wanted to kill Mr. Floyd, and he told these people like, "Hey, I really want to kill this dude, and just follow my lead." Then they can say, "Hey, yeah, he told us this, and that's, we just followed his lead, and here we are."
Because as you're talking about this, another scenario came in my head is it may be hard, and unless he openly bragged about wanting to get this guy killed or hurt this guy or jail this guy or arrest this guy or whatever, it maybe it's something premeditated, bias towards this guy for whatever reason. I know there's a report that came out that them two worked with each other at some point at a bar, about doing security, whatever. I have no idea if that has anything to do with anything. However, you know, when the when the local shop guy who called about the forge, the $20 forge or whatnot, which called the cops in the first place, Derek Chauvin happened to be there, and he was called to the scene. It just happened to, maybe just happened to be random. It just happened to be by chance, or I mean, I don't know if premeditated. I don't know if it's premeditated or not. I mean, that's, like you said, it'd be very hard to prove.
You're building a theory.
I'm building a theory. I mean, I'm just throwing a scenario out there because it's random. It's like
Right now, there's several theories out there because there's a lot of factors that go into play in this. Yeah, I heard the report of these individuals actually knew each other years ago and they worked together. Yeah, I heard Chauvin denied ever knowing Mr. Floyd. I hear that somewhere along the number 17, I think they worked 17 years ago together, or they worked for 17 years together, or something to that effect. I honestly have not looked any of these up, because at the end of the day, I'm not handling this investigation. So
yeah.
to me, it's not something that I'm going to look into. The detectives will be handling all that. There's also, again, yeah, what you heard. I heard as well that the shop owner called and Mr. Chauvin happened to be in the area and came up, took it upon himself to show up to the scene, and here we are today. I've heard some stories that the Asian officer, his sister, is apparently married to Mr. Chauvin. Um, that's supposedly a rumor or a story that I heard. But I don't believe everything you see on social media or on the news outlets, because it's all suited to fit an agenda. Um, I wait for the facts. The facts are whatever the investigators are deciphering and bringing to the table for prosecution is what I go with. Because there's a lot of theories. There's theories that there's another theory I heard was that Mr. Floyd apparently had knowledge of dirty laundry against officials in Minnesota, because the ambulance or the rescue personnel that showed up on scene didn't look like rescue personnel. They looked like officers because they looked like they had uniforms and and vests and what appears to be a gun belt. And they didn't start rendering aid to Mr. Floyd. They rolled him on a gurney and threw him in the backseat of a van and kept going. So there's a lot of theories that you can play out, even on a basic police level. If indeed this was an accident, if indeed if it was an accident, meaning there was no malice here, it just, for whatever reason, this dude passed out and he's now being rushed to the hospital and he's not looking good, obviously, because he's unresponsive. That whole area needs to be treated as a crime scene.
Mm-hmm.
That whole area needs to be taped up, traffic redirected, everything on lockdown, shut down. People that are there you need to grab their IDs and hold them on scene and wait.
Mm-hmm.
And if he survives, then you just document what happened. If he doesn't, then you have a homicide, which everyone there needs to be investigated and whatnot. So, can there be theories and hypotheticals? Of course, there's a lot of theories and hypotheticals that people are throwing out there, but it all depends on who's throwing them out there and what's the agenda they're trying to serve to other individuals.
I did.
As I've
I did read. Not to cut you out there, but I did read that Chauvin's wife did file for divorce, so that happened.
Yeah, I heard that too. And
I
good.
had no
And
idea of the
listen,
relation to if it was a sister of the one cop or not. I haven't heard any. I haven't read anything about that. It wouldn't surprise me, but I haven't read anything. I think that's neither here nor there. But
exactly, it's not relevant to the
it's
incident.
not.
It's only relevant in the sense that if that were proven, then it would kind of explain why he did not intervene when Chauvin was doing what he was doing. Maybe because he's thinking about his sister and if they have kids, his nieces and nephews, and this is his brother-in-law, and he's putting family before anything else. So maybe that's the only way to be relevant. But again, it hasn't been proven. I don't know if that's the fact. I did hear about his wife leaving him, and in doing so, it's right. It's rightfully so. I mean, what is she gonna do with seeing her husband now commit murder on TV? Like, there's nothing to repair after that, and there's nothing that that gentleman is gonna say, nothing that he can say to anyone that's going to justify or even clear his name for what he did. So maybe she did. Maybe she understands it and she cut her losses and left. And I wouldn't blame her. I actually applaud her for doing that. She's not standing by a murderer's side the way I look at it.
Yeah, amen. One final question here before we wrap this up. Uh, the one thing that we keep hearing over the last week, people are, it's not the first time we've heard this. It happens every time this particular incident or any incident that has to do with police officers are involved. We keep hearing and people chanting and screaming there needs to be change and reform, needs to be change, change, change. From your 15 years of experience in law enforcement and working with 3 different agencies, if you were to implement, if you were able to implement, I mean, everybody says, man, if I were the boss, I would do this. If I was, the person in charge, I would do this. So here I am. I'm going to make you chief of police. I'm going to make you the mayor. I'm going to make you whatever position you need to be in to implement a change within a department, within the police in general. What one change or reform in law enforcement, what would it be? What would you do? If there happens to be 2 or 3, that's fine. But what would be like the main one off the top of your head from your experience would need to be implemented for this to really be either a non-issue or a very minimalized issue where it just doesn't really occur?
It's that's a very good question. Honestly, it's something I've never thought of. It has never crossed my mind as someone that I have never seen myself go up in rank in this career. It's not something I ever wanted to do. Um, but it's a very good question because yes, honestly, change and reform does need to happen. Um, and I think it has to start. If I had a choice, if I had my way, I would think it would be with what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to put it out as best as possible. Um, what's the word I'm looking for here? Just interaction more with communities. I would have to, you would have to. Our last conversation, I explained to you that I think some of the disconnect. Listen, with this George Floyd incident, in my opinion, it's just pure malice. This is someone that had an evil heart. It didn't matter what training, experiences this guy had. For whatever reason, he decided he wanted to commit murder on this guy today. There was no, if this wasn't a police action that one can say, oops, this was just evil, period.
Yep.
So there's nothing that you're going to do here, change anything that's going to change this outcome, because this person just had it out to want to kill Mr. Floyd for whatever reason. We don't know. But in referring to the previous incidents that have been actions of law enforcement matter that resulted in the death of an innocent individual or a black man or whatever was the circumstances at the end of the day, it goes back to our conversation from our previous incident conversation, where the intermixing of races does not occur enough in people's everyday lives to be able to have a compassionate heart and a consideration towards other races, other people's experiences, other people's everyday life.
Hmm.
Um, so I think if I was a chief, I think it would be trying to implement some kind of either training practice or interaction practice with the less fortunate, the low income neighborhoods, low income personnel, encourage ride alongs from those individuals with us, with law enforcement, and even encourage officers to go spend time with those individuals so that they can learn a different realm than what they're used to. They can learn how some people are brought up. I can give you an example that I've had back and forths on social media um, with individuals that I'm not in favor of the law enforcement action that was taken in this situation, but I'm also not in favor of the looting and the rioting that has occurred. I'm in favor for the end of unjust police brutality and for peaceful protest. So trying to explain to people who put anti-police banter on social media, and here I come and try to defend not their actions, not my actions, but try to paint a picture of look at this from outside, look at this from a different angle, look at this from a third person. I had an individual that saw one of my comments and automatically assumed that I was a white guy that grew up privileged and with a spoon in my mouth, and that's the reason why I made the comment that I made.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until when I responded to him and explained to him, like, look, I grew up in in suburbs. I mean, not suburbs, in poor neighborhoods. I grew up being harassed my teenage years because I had two 12-inch subwoofers in the back of my car, and I have been on the ground face down because of my subwoofers, being interrogated like if I was some gang member or drug dealer. I've been there. I grew up with my parents were both illegal immigrants who have been laborers all their life. So if you seem to think that I'm just some privileged guy because I've made something of my life without even getting to know me, shame on you.
Right.
And again, I have this viewpoint because of my upbringing, which you know, because you and I grew up in the same neighborhoods with the same friends. And again, we've known each other a very long time. But not everyone has grown up where we grew up. A
True.
lot of people that become cops grew up in either ghettos, some of the officers are ghetto, or some of them grew up in just primarily yuppie Hispanic neighborhoods or yuppie white neighborhoods, and they don't know. They just never had friends of the opposite race. They don't know how the opposite race, ethnicity think. They don't know how they act. They don't know how they talk. Um, which again, what I said in the previous conversation, I think once those individuals learn and accept other people's behaviors based on their upbringing, based on culture, I think their interactions moving forward, their actions and decisions moving forward when they interact with these individuals on the street will put them a little bit at ease to understand that if you have a black individual that's talking loudly, it's not that he's trying to be aggressive and want to fight you. It's just some people of black color just are loud people. They just
Right.
like to yell and talk. They're not trying to be aggressive with you. They're just loud. It's something we touched on in the last conversation as well. You encounter my family on the street, and you're gonna think that they're yelling at each other and fighting each other. And in reality, that's just the way they talk.
Fuck. Yep.
So I think when officers get exposed to these cultures and they get to see how these individuals carry themselves, what traits they've developed over the years, how they interact with their own family members, then you kind of get an understanding of how they're going to respond to you. And you'll kind of learn how to ease the tension, um, how to put them at ease and bring both your guards down to be able to move forward to find a resolution.
Hmm.
Um, because on first instinct, when you see a cop, the first thing you think is, especially a white cop, you white looking cop, how about that? Because I look like I'm white, but I'm Hispanic. You
Right.
see me in uniform, the first thing they think is, oh, here comes this fucking cop to harass me. And realistically, I'm here because I was called here, so I need to address it. So the minute I notice that tension, or I notice that you already have that mindset, I try to break the ice. I try to find ways to break the ice. I try to make light of the situation. I try to make a joke. Especially if I find out you're from a neighborhood I'm from. Oh, you're from New York? Oh, are you a Yankee fan? Yeah, I love the Yankees. I'm like, oh shit, we're on a bad, I don't like you already. I'm a Mets fan. Oh, now they understand. Now they let the guard down because they see, oh, this dude's like simple, humble. He's just doing his job. It's not like, oh, I'm here because you're XYZ ethnicity.
Right.
So cops need to learn how to break down those tensions, how to form those conversations, how to. I'm not saying I'm not saying turn your back on what's going on. I'm just saying like learn how to deal with people of different culture and ethnicities, because not everyone is expected to listen to a police officer on first response.
Mhm.
Being Colombian, I'll tell you right off the bat, Colombian individuals don't respect cops because they think all cops are crooked. Because in Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, cops are shady as hell. You
Yeah.
pay them off. They beat you up. They take your stuff. So when you tell these people, I need you to sit right there, they're not going to listen to you because they think you're setting them up for something. And then, of course, in the Black community, they've had bad experiences with cops. So they're going to initially their response is they're going to not listen. They're not going to
Very
want to
defensive.
follow.
Yeah.
Yeah, their defenses are up.
Hmm.
But yet, because white folks in nice white communities who get raised to respect their cops, they'll listen to you. They don't know any better. That's just what the norm is for them. So I think I would try to find some kind of way to to mix it all together where you can kind of get an understanding and a respect for everyone's culture and everyone's way of being, so that you can understand how people will act in certain situations moving forward.
I,
I,
I
I think
I think you made a really good suggestion there when it came to it's like a community outreach. It's working
exactly
with the community, having the officers, probably even make something mandatory where you get to spend X amount of days or hours within the community doing community work or a community service type of thing, and set up specific programs for the police officers to work with the lower income neighborhoods,
exactly
with the poor, and to really understand that, living in Dade County, I'm born and raised Dade County, up until last August when I finally moved to Palm Beach County because I about had it enough with Dade County. But growing up down there, and especially in South Florida, we're such a melting pot uh, of communities down there. So, you know, growing up with, everybody from the I grew up with Black people, Hispanic people, Middle Eastern people, Asian people. Everybody's here, just like in New York and in LA and these bigger uh, communities. And I think it's really a good point you made. Community outreach would be huge to build up the trust and to build up the rapport between the community and its police officers, because that's huge. And the part that really frustrates me, and the part that really, and I'm not even police, I've never had a law enforcement job, but the part that really frustrates me with, is that as soon as it seems like the bridge is starting to widen, and the gap is begin to shrink between the community and the police in a good and positive way, one action by one cop that doesn't represent the entire, like Little Wayne said, you can't judge the action of one cop to, paint the entire police force with the same brush here. you know it's it seems like that one action just completely makes it start over from zero again, if not beyond zero. And it's like all that work for no, it's like all that work just gets torn apart because of the actions of one officer. And
correct.
that's the part that really frustrates me, because it seems like we're making that next step, we move 80 steps back. because of
Correct.
one action, and it's got
Well,
to be more frustrating for the police officers too.
it is. It is because I'll start with this. Racism is a very sensitive subject to
It is.
discuss
It is.
because I feel that if you want to address racism, you have to be as blunt as possible without people getting offended. And I've had those conversations directly with my friends of that are black, but they know that I'm having this conversation as trying to mend bridges because they know I'm not racist. They know they've known me for years. They
Yeah.
know who I am. They know that the sympathy and compassion. I don't see color. Um, Honestly, I grew up in New York in the '80s, and in New York, growing up there, to my knowledge, in my borough, in my block, in my neighborhoods, there was no difference. We didn't see race. It I didn't learn what racism was in the sense of it actually showing up to me until I got here to South Florida. When going to high school, I was told, "Hey, tomorrow's Cracker Day."
Yeah.
I'm like,
Hmm.
"What the hell? What the hell's Cracker Day? I've never heard of this." Well, tomorrow's when the black kids beat up all the white kids, and my response was, "Why? Well, what did they do?" I go, "No, they just do it once a year, Cracker Day." And I'm like, so you sit there and you start saying to yourself, "Well, it's considered almost reverse racism. You guys created something called Cracker Day," and then I started trying to be fair, say, well, what if they had an end day? And what happens then? Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, there it is, racism's alive. Well, if you're creating a Cracker Day, racism's alive.
Hmm.
Plain and simple. It's just reverse racism. Now, of course, because it's a sensitive subject, they want to, individuals will sit there and come out and say, yeah, but we've been oppressed for X amount of years and this and that. And we're, okay, listen, I understand all that. But if you want to move forward and try to end the divide and end the racism, the past needs to stay in the past. You can't keep bringing that up when it's convenient for you.
Yeah.
Because if you're sitting there saying to me that Black Lives Matter, then explain to me why a black federal officer got killed in Oakland. Explain to me why a black police officer in Louisville got killed because of these riots. That's a contradictive situation. You're telling me Black Lives Matter, but yet you got black officers that are getting killed.
Hmm.
So which Black Lives Matter? Because that's the question I ask. In Chicago, you'll have 25 to 30 black individuals get killed in one weekend.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, those black lives don't matter. Only the ones that get put on TV, that get put on social media, are the ones that matter because it's going to lead to riots and looting, and then people are going to take advantage of that to go get free shit. And I've said this 1,000 times. I'm in favor of there needs to be change. I'm in favor that police officers need to learn how to develop thicker skins, to be less sensitive, to be more of a punching bag, like it or not. That's her job, to be a more of a punching bag in the sense of words. And instead of just being quick to react, to be able to move forward with putting this behind us and trying to become better cops, better individuals, better community uh, leaders or people, figures in the community, as opposed to, like you said, taking 2 steps forward and then we're 60 steps back because of this one piece of shit's actions. So, with that being said, if Little Wayne said that, because I wasn't aware he said that, I commend him
Hmm.
because I have black friends that will sit there and agree with what my statement is. You can't judge all cops based on one individual's actions,
Right.
right? And then I have black friends that disagree with that. Well, there shouldn't be bad cops to begin with, just like there's no bad pilots. I'm like, what do you mean there's no bad pilots? There was a bad pilot that killed Kobe Bryant.
Hmm.
Okay, every other pilot knew that that weather should not have been flown in, but yet this one pilot thought he could make it. And look, Kobe Bryant and his daughter's dead. There's a pilot and killed an entire Brazilian soccer team because he should have gotten gas, refused to get gas, thinking he could make it, and an entire team got killed. There's pilots that are never getting publicized. This doesn't go on the media. This doesn't go on the news. But there's plenty of pilots that before a flight are at the bar having drinks. People find out under the rug, you get You get fired or released, you resign, go get a job somewhere else. And no one finds out about these incidents. So there are bad apples in every profession.
Every.
Can you paint the whole profession? Like someone said the other day, someone put a meme about that. Um, I can't remember what the meme says, but you can't paint a whole profession based on the actions of some individuals who, again, all the training in the world, Dan, all the training in the world is not going to help a person who just has a malicious heart.
Agreed.
It's either going to be in you to want to be a good human being, to not see color, to just see people for who they are and do your job and raise kids like that, or you're just going to be someone that has a biased, malicious heart. Regardless of who you encounter, you're just going to be evil and malice, and that's it. You're not going to care, and you're going to take that badge and that gun, and you're going to walk with it with your chest high, like everyone needs to bow down to you. And that's not the facts. That's not how life works.
Agreed. It's, again, it's extremely sad and disheartening of what happened to George Floyd. He didn't deserve it. It doesn't matter what potential crime he may or potential felony or whatever happened at that store. It doesn't even matter. His life should never, ever have been forfeited for that. It's very sad what happened to him. I hope he rests in peace. I hope finally his family can get the justice that it deserves. And we could heal as a nation in one way and move forward positively, because I stand for the protesters. I stand, with the, wanting the accountability for all those that needs to be held accountable. I'm all for that, but I am never ever going to side with the looters and the rioters and the ones that are causing destruction, within their own communities. And it's very sad that these people are trying to do it within the name of George Floyd, when it stopped being about George Floyd a long time ago with these rioters.
Correct. Even the individuals, I hate to say this because it's hard to expect people to do this, but the peaceful protesters that are there doing the right protest in the name of George Floyd should be the one checking that second wave of individuals that show up to create those riots and those lootings.
And some have,
Yeah, they have, and
some have.
I applaud them because
Yeah,
you can see, obviously, like you said, they're not there for the name of George Floyd. They're using it as an excuse to go get free stuff.
yeah.
Okay, you can't tell me if you're stealing from Peter to give to Paul, then by all means go and donate them. Great. But you're just stealing to steal. You're coming on social media telling you want to raid a mall because you want the Versace, you want the Gucci, you want the Rolexes because you want to now sell it the next day and get rich, all in the memory of George Floyd. How the hell is that in the memory of this individual?
Hmm.
You're going out there and committing crime to then not only give it to your people, but you're going to sell it to your own people to get rich? Explain to me what good you are doing. What's your point in this message? What's the purpose of this tirade?
Yeah, George Floyd's brother, he gave a very good and passionate speech, saying, "Listen, what you guys are doing are not about the memory of George Floyd, about the memory of my brother." He gave a very good speech, and I commend. There's a lot of for a lot of bad that's on social media right now. You do see a lot of people trying to do good. They're trying to do good. They're trying to call out the people. They're trying to exploit exactly
Yeah.
what's going on, and I commend those people. Uh, they're
Just real quick, a real quick statement.
yeah,
Something I've been told or something I've heard was we in our profession need to check each other. You're 100% correct. Well, guess what? You and your movement, you and your ethnicity, you in your actions need to check your own.
yeah,
It doesn't
right.
matter if your protesters, peaceful protesters, are black, white, Asian, Hispanic, female, male, whatever. But the minute you see that here comes that second wave, that you can tell the difference, and once the second group starts showing up, regardless of black, white, female, male, whatever they are, you and the masses need to check these individuals. You need to put them in their place. You need to stop them before shit gets real because they are killing everything you are trying to accomplish.
Agreed. Well, that's about the time that we have right now. I am sure that this detective and I will have another discussion in the near future, whether it's about this or just something else in general. Detective, I really appreciate your time and your insight. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me again, and we'll do this again in the future.
Sounds good, brother. Pleasure having me again. Thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully we can start again mending these bridges and moving forward and talking about there hasn't been any violence in weeks. Who knows?
Yeah, I hope so. With that being said, George Floyd, rest in peace. And we
Agreed.
really are hoping to get the justice that you deserve and your family deserves for this heinous act by this one individual that does not represent everybody. So, with that being said, I appreciate it and have a good one.
Thank you too, brother. Be safe.
All right.